It's the night before your license renews. You've got 4 hours of continuing ed left to do, and you're clicking through modules just to check a box. I want to talk to you out of that approach today because CEUs done strategically are one of the most underused career tools you actually have. Welcome back to Nursing Matters. I'm Christina. Today we're reframing continuing education from a licensure requirement into an actual career strategy. So every state sets its own CE requirements for license renewal, and honestly, requirements keep trending toward including more specific mandated topics. Things like implicit bias, human trafficking recognition, opioid prescribing awareness, depending on your state and role. Worth knowing because generic CEU packages don't always cover your state's specific mandates, and finding that out during renewal week is a stressful, totally avoidable problem. There's also been a shift towards CEU platforms offering more specialty-specific tracks rather than just generic content, partly in response to nurses pushing back on hours that felt disconnected from their actual practice. That's good news for you because it means the tools for making your hours count strategically are more available now than they were even a few years ago. One more piece worth knowing, some employers are starting to build their own internal CEU tracking and recommendation systems tied to a formal clinical ladder, essentially pre-mapping which CEU categories align with each rung of advancement. Now, if your facility has anything like this, it's worth asking your professional development department directly, since it can save you a lot of guesswork about which courses actually count toward internal advancement. I remember talking to a nurse named Kevin who'd been doing the absolute bare minimum on CEUs for years. Just whatever popped up first in a search, cheapest option, done. When he decided he wanted to move toward a case management role, he realized he had zero documented education in that direction, even though he'd completed dozens of hours over the years. We sat down and mapped out exactly which CEU categories aligned with case management, and over about 18 months of renewal cycles, he built a real, visible thread of relevant education. When he applied for his first case management role, he could point to specific coursework that directly supported his candidacy. Same amount of required hours he would have done anyways, just aimed at something. What Kevin told me afterwards kind of stuck with me. He said the actual studying itself felt completely different once it had direction. Instead of clicking through modules, half paying attention just to get the certificate, he found himself genuinely retaining the material because it connected to something he cared about. That's really the hidden benefit of strategic CEU choices beyond just the resume value. You actually learn more when the hours have a purpose behind them. So here's the mindset shift. CEUs aren't just a renewal requirement, they're a low-cost way to build documented expertise in a direction you actually want your career to go. Most nurses just pick whatever's cheapest and fastest. The nurses who move into specialty roles change positions, non-clinical pivots, usually the ones who picked CEUs that built a visible thread of expertise over time. So ask yourself, what do I want to be known for in 2 years? If it's a specialty certification like CCRN, CEN, or OCN, start choosing CEUs that build toward that exam's blueprint, not just whatever hits the state minimum. You're doing the hours anyways. You might as well make them count twice. If you're eyeing a non-clinical pivot, such as case management, quality improvement, informatics, education, there are CEU courses specifically in those lanes. Doing them accomplishes two things at once. It actually prepares you And it gives you something concrete to point to in an interview when someone asks why you're qualified for a role outside of direct patient care. Second strategy, track your CEUs somewhere organized, not scattered across 5 platforms with certifications buried in your email somewhere. A simple spreadsheet with course name, date, hours, category, certificate link. It's going to save you enormous stress at renewal time, and it becomes a quick reference when you're updating your resume or LinkedIn. Third, don't discount facility-provided education. In-services, unit-based training, hospital-sponsored certifications will often count towards your CEU requirement and cost you nothing. Ask your educator what's available before you pay for outside courses covering the same ground. Fourth, use CEUs to test drive a specialty before committing fully. Curious about wound care or dialysis or hospice? A focused CEU course is a low-risk way to get real exposure before you invest in a full specialty transition or an expensive certification exam. Fifth, and this one's so underrated, pay attention to which CEU topics keep genuinely holding your interest versus ones that feel like a slog every time. That pattern over a few renewal cycles is actually useful data about where your real curiosity lives, and curiosity sustained over years is usually a better compass for career direction than any single personality quiz or career assessment. Sixth, plan your CEU hours across the full renewal cycle rather than cramming them all in at the last minute. Spreading 4 or 6 hours across several months, maybe one course a quarter, means you actually have the mental space to engage with the content rather than speed clicking through modules in a caffeine-fueled panic the week before your license expires. Let's also talk about how to actually retain what you study, not just check the box. Passive video watching while multitasking is the default mode for a lot of CEU completion, and it's also the mode that retains the very least. Even simple active steps, pausing to jot one key takeaway per module, or explaining a concept out loud to a coworker afterwards, it's going to meaningfully improve how much actually sticks compared to just clicking through slides while your mind wanders. One more thing worth considering. Some nurses build a small personal reference file from their CEU completions, a simple document collecting the key clinical points from each course they've taken, organized by topic. Over several years, that file becomes genuinely useful. It's a personal, quick reference resource, built entirely from education you were already required to complete anyway. It's also worth revisiting your CEU strategy specifically whenever your career goals shift, rather than assuming the plan you built 2 years ago is still the right one. A quick 10-minute check-in with yourself once a year alongside this reflection keeps your continuing education genuinely aligned with whatever your career is wherever it's heading next, rather than running on outdated momentum from a goal you've since moved past. And finally, put your CEU-driven credentials to work publicly. Update your resume, your LinkedIn, mention new expertise to your manager directly when relevant projects come up. Nurses who quietly finish education and never mention it rarely get considered for the opportunities that education was actually preparing them for. Education without visibility is a missed opportunity, plain and simple. Now let's talk about some common mistakes to avoid. Mistake number 1, waiting until the final week before renewal to complete all of your required hours, which almost guarantees you're rushing and not actually absorbing the content. Mistake number 2, assuming all CEU platforms cover your state's specific mandated topics automatically. Always, always, always double check the specific requirements for your license type and state before assuming a general package has you covered. Mistake number 3, never revisiting your CEU strategy as your goals change. What made sense 2 years ago may not align with where you want to go next, so it's worth reassessing your direction at least once a year, not just picking courses on autopilot. So let's move on to listener mailbag. A listener asked, is it worth paying for a premium CEU platform instead of the cheapest option? Well, it's a great question, and honestly, it depends on your goals. If you're just hitting your state minimum with no particular direction, the cheapest compliant option is fine. But if you're trying to build toward a specialty certification or a career pivot, a platform with genuinely strong specialty-specific content is worth the extra cost because the quality and relevance of what you're actually learning starts to matter more than just the hour count on a certificate. Another listener asked, can CEUs from one state transfer if I move and get licensed somewhere else? Another good question. Generally, CEU hours themselves are portable in terms of the content and the certificate, but each state has its own required categories and total hour count. So you'll want to check your new state's specific board requirements rather than assuming your old state's completed hours will automatically satisfy the new one. So this is exactly why we built the CE Marketplace on rnnet.org. Accredited continuing education across all 50 states, organized so you can compare state requirements side by side and choose courses that build toward where you're headed, not just whatever's cheapest. To learn more, visit rnnet.org and check out the CE Marketplace. So let's talk about your take action step for the week. This week, pull up your state's specific CEU requirements and map them against a specialty or pivot you're interested in. Then actually schedule the specific courses into your calendar for this renewal cycle rather than leaving it as a vague someday intention. Even 10 minutes of intentional planning changes how those hours work for you. And that's it for today's episode of Nursing Matters. If this message resonated with you, be sure to like and subscribe wherever you stream your favorite content. If you know a nurse cramming CEUs the night before renewal, please share this with them. As always, I appreciate you listening today, and remember, keep going because nursing matters.